The real story of Mother's Day. How a daughter's love created a national holiday. Cards are opened. Phone calls are made. Restaurants fill up. Families gather. And for a few moments, people everywhere try to express gratitude for the women who raised them, guided them, protected them, and sacrificed for them. But have you ever stopped to ask a deeper question? Where did Mother's Day actually come from? Most people assume it was just another modern holiday created by tradition, business, or advertising. Some think it has always existed in the form we know today. Others believe it began as a simple American celebration and nothing more. But the truth is much more fascinating. The history of Mother's Day is not just the story of a holiday. It is the story of ancient civilizations, religious customs, grief, women's activism, war, peace, family, memory, and one determined daughter whose dream changed the calendar forever. And perhaps the most surprising part of all is this: the woman most responsible for creating Mother's Day later became one of its biggest critics. So today, we are going to explore the real history behind Mother's Day, where the idea began, how it evolved through the centuries, how it became official in the United States, and why its founder eventually fought against the very celebration she helped create. By the end of this story, you may see Mother's Day in a completely different way. The desire to honor motherhood is much older than the modern holiday. Long before anyone celebrated Mother's Day with flowers, brunch, or greeting cards, ancient people were already creating ceremonies and festivals connected to mothers and maternal figures. In the ancient world, motherhood was often linked to religion, fertility, life, and the survival of society itself. Many civilizations viewed maternal figures as symbols of creation, nourishment, and protection. Because of that, mother goddesses often held an important place in public and spiritual life. Among the ancient Phrygians, people honored Cybele, a powerful mother goddess. In Greek tradition, there were celebrations connected to Rhea, who was seen as the mother of many gods. The Romans also developed ceremonies that reflected similar ideas, celebrating maternal power and divine feminine figures. Of course, these events were not Mother's Day in the modern sense. People were not gathering to give handwritten notes to their mothers or take them out to lunch. But these ancient customs reveal something very important. The idea of giving special honor to motherhood is deeply rooted in human civilization. Even in societies separated by geography, language, and religion, mothers were seen as worthy of respect, reverence, and celebration. That tells us that the emotional foundation of Mother's Day is not new at all. It is ancient. But the holiday we recognize today did not grow directly out of those old pagan festivals. To find the next major step, we need to move forward many centuries into Christian Europe. In the medieval England, a different tradition began to take shape. On the fourth Sunday of Lent, people would return to their mother church. This was usually the main church or cathedral in the area where they had been baptized or where their family belonged. For many people who had moved away for work or service, this gave them a chance to go back home. Over time, that journey became about more than the church itself. It also became a family occasion. As people returned to their home communities, they would often visit their mothers and spend time with family. Because of this, the day slowly developed a more domestic and emotional meaning. It became known as Mothering Sunday. This tradition still survives in the United Kingdom today, although its religious roots are much older than the modern secular Mother's Day celebrated in many other countries. Why is this important? Because it marks a major shift in the story. The celebration is no longer focused only on a symbolic mother goddess. It is now becoming connected to real homes, real families, and real mothers. The focus moves from mythology to personal life. That emotional shift matters. Mothering Sunday helped shape the idea that honoring mothers could be tied to affection, family reunion, and gratitude. It brought the celebration closer to everyday life. But even then, it was still part of a religious calendar. It was not yet a national holiday, centered entirely on mothers themselves. That modern version would develop later, especially in America, and it would grow out of a much more emotional and complicated moment in history. When we look at the history of Mother's Day in the United States, we find something surprising. The holiday did not begin as a cheerful commercial occasion. It began in a world shaped by suffering, disease, division, and loss. One important figure in this early American story was Anna Jarvis, a woman whose work would eventually influence the creation of the modern holiday. Before Mother's Day existed as a national celebration, Anna Jarvis organized groups of women focused on improving health conditions in their communities. These efforts were especially important at a time when disease and poor sanitation took the lives of many children. Her work showed that mothers were not only caretakers inside the home, they could also be community organizers and protectors of public welfare. Then came the American Civil War. Like so many conflicts, it tore families and communities apart. After the war, efforts were made in some areas to bring people back together. Anna Jarvis was associated with events meant to encourage healing between families connected to former Union and Confederate soldiers. These gatherings reflected a powerful idea. Mothers could serve as a force for reconciliation in a divided nation. At roughly the same time, another woman gave a different but related push to the idea of honoring mothers in public life. In 1870, Julia Ward Howe wrote what became known as the Mother's Day Proclamation, a passionate appeal calling on mothers to unite in the cause of peace. She later promoted the idea of a Mother's Peace Day, hoping mothers would be recognized not only for family care, but also for their moral influence in the world. Although her campaign did not create the modern holiday we know today, it added another important layer to the history of Mother's Day. So, by the late 19th century, several themes were already connected to the idea: motherhood, community service, public health, peace, healing, after war, and moral leadership. That means Mother's Day was never just about sentiment. From the beginning, it carried emotional depth and social meaning. And then, out of all these threads, one woman would transform the idea into a permanent national observance. That woman was Anna Jarvis. The modern history of Mother's Day is impossible to tell without Anna Jarvis. Her story is at the heart of the holiday. Anna was deeply shaped by the life and values of her mother, Anna Jarvis. She admired her mother's service, her compassion, and her role in the community. At some point, Anna heard her mother express the hope that one day mothers would be properly recognized for everything they do for humanity. That idea stayed with her. When Anna Jarvis died in 1905, her daughter was devastated. But out of that grief came determination. Anna Jarvis became committed to creating a day specifically devoted to honoring mothers. This is what makes the origin of Mother's Day so moving. It was not born from marketing or politics. It was born from love and loss. Anna did not simply want a public event. She wanted a meaningful memorial, a day that would encourage sincere appreciation for mothers everywhere. In 1908, she organized a memorial service for her mother at Andrews Methodist Episcopal Church in Grafton, West Virginia. That church, had been a meaningful part of her mother's life, which made it the perfect place for such an occasion. Around the same time, another observance took place in Philadelphia. These events are generally recognized as the beginning of the modern Mother's Day celebration in America. Anna Jarvis also used white carnations as a symbol of the day. This flower had special meaning because it had been her mother's favorite. The white carnation came to represent qualities such as purity, faithfulness, and lasting love. That choice tells us something important about Anna's vision. She wanted Mother's Day to feel personal, respectful, and sincere. Not flashy, not commercial, not extravagant. In her mind, the holiday was meant to honor the emotional reality of motherhood, not to create a spectacle. But once the idea began to spread, it quickly moved far beyond one church, one daughter, and one memorial. And that is when history accelerated. After the first observance in 1908, Anna Jarvis threw herself into a campaign to make Mother's Day officially recognized. She wrote letters to ministers, public leaders, organizations, and politicians. She promoted the idea tirelessly. She argued that mothers deserved a dedicated day of honor, and she framed the cause in a way that was both emotional and universal. Her campaign worked faster than many people might expect. The idea resonated deeply with the public. State after state began to observe Mother's Day in some form. Within just a few years, the movement had gained national momentum. This rapid spread reveals how powerful the idea was. People may disagree about politics, religion, or policy, but very few want to argue against honoring mothers. That gave the movement a kind of emotional strength that many public campaigns never achieve. Eventually, the effort reached the federal level. In 1914, Mother's Day was officially recognized in the United States. The second Sunday in May was designated as the annual day of observance, and President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation encouraging Americans to honor the mothers of the nation. That moment transformed Mother's Day from a growing social movement into an official part of national life. And once it became official, it grew even more rapidly. What had started as a daughter's tribute became a yearly tradition shared by families across the country. Over time, it became one of the most widely recognized emotional holidays in American culture. But success came with the cost because it had been her mother's favorite. The white carnation came to represent qualities such as purity, faithfulness, and lasting love. That choice tells us something important about Anna's vision. She wanted Mother's Day to feel personal, respectful, and sincere. Not flashy, not commercial, not extravagant. In her mind, the holiday was meant to honor the emotional reality of motherhood, not to create a spectacle. But once the idea began to spread, it quickly moved far beyond one church, one daughter, and one memorial. And that is when history accelerated. After the first observance in 1908, Anna Jarvis threw herself into a campaign to make Mother's Day officially recognized. She wrote letters to ministers, public leaders, organizations, and politicians. She promoted the idea tirelessly. She argued that mothers deserved a dedicated day of honor, and she framed the cause in a way that was both emotional and universal. Her campaign worked faster than many people might expect. The idea resonated deeply with the public. State after state began to observe Mother's Day in some form. Within just a few years, the movement had gained national momentum. This rapid spread reveals how powerful the idea was. People may disagree about politics, religion, or policy, but very few want to argue against honoring mothers. That gave the movement a kind of emotional strength that many public campaigns never achieve. Eventually, the effort reached the federal level. In 1914, Mother's Day was officially recognized in the United States. The second Sunday in May was designated as the annual day of observance, and President Woodrow Wilson issued a proclamation encouraging Americans to honor the mothers of the nation. That moment transformed Mother's Day from a growing social movement into an official part of national life. And once it became official, it grew even more rapidly. What had started as a daughter's tribute became a yearly tradition shared by families across the country. Over time, it became one of the most widely recognized emotional holidays in American culture. But success came with the cost. Because as Mother's Day became more popular, more visible, and more widespread, it also became more profitable. And that is where the story takes a dramatic turn. One of the most remarkable facts in the history of Mother's Day is that Anna Jarvis, the woman who helped create it, later became one of its fiercest opponents. Why? Because she believed the holiday was being corrupted. Anna's original vision was simple. People should honor their mothers with genuine love, heartfelt words, and personal gratitude. She believed in handwritten letters, meaningful gestures, and honest emotional expression. But once Mother's Day became a national holiday, businesses saw an opportunity. Florists promoted flowers. Candy companies sold sweets. Greeting card companies created ready-made messages. Retailers turned the holiday into a shopping event. To many people, that probably looked harmless or even helpful. After all, flowers and cards seemed like natural ways to celebrate. But to Anna Jarvis, it was a betrayal of everything she had intended. She believed that buying a pre-written card was not the same as taking the time to write something from the heart. She felt that commercial products were replacing genuine human feeling with convenience and profit. In her eyes, the holiday was being emptied of its original meaning. And Anna Jarvis did not stay quiet about it. She publicly criticized companies and organizations that use Mother's Day for profit or fundraising. She protested events, challenged groups she believed were misusing the day, and became increasingly outspoken in her opposition to the commercial direction of the holiday. In one of the great ironies of American history, the founder of Mother's Day ended up fighting against the public version of the holiday she had worked so hard to establish. At one point, she even disrupted public events connected to Mother's Day and was arrested after one protest. Think about how extraordinary that is. A woman spends years creating a national holiday. The holiday becomes successful. Then she spends years trying to protect it from what it had become. That tells us how seriously she took her original purpose. To Anna Jarvis, Mother's Day was never supposed to be a business season. It was supposed to be a deeply personal tribute, one rooted in memory, sacrifice, and love. Her fight against commercialization remains one of the most compelling chapters in the story because it raises a timeless question. When a holiday becomes popular, can it keep its soul? Even though Mother's Day became official in the United States in 1914, the idea did not stay there. Over time, the celebration spread to many countries around the world. In some places, it followed the American model and continued to be observed on the second Sunday in May. In other places, local traditions shaped the date and meaning differently. In the United Kingdom, for example, Mothering Sunday remained connected to the older Christian calendar and continued to be observed during Lent. In other countries, Mother's Day took on national customs of its own. This worldwide spread shows just how universal the emotional appeal of the holiday really is. The language changes. The date may change. The customs may differ. But the central feeling remains recognizable almost everywhere. People want a moment to honor the women who cared for them. That emotional truth crosses borders. It moves through cultures. It survives changes in religion, politics, and custom. That is part of what made Mother's Day so durable. Even as the holiday evolved, expanded, and became commercialized in many places, its emotional center remained powerful enough to endure. Because at its core, the holiday speaks to a nearly universal human experience: being loved, being protected, being guided, and looking back one day with gratitude. So what does Mother's Day really mean? Its meaning is layered. It carries echoes of ancient civilizations that honored maternal power. It reflects medieval traditions of returning home and reconnecting with family. It holds the influence of women who worked for peace, health, and community healing. And in its modern American form, it is deeply tied to the love of a daughter for her mother. That is why the history of Mother's Day feels so rich. It is not just a holiday story. It is a human story. Anna Jarvis did not create the holiday from a business plan or a political strategy. She created it from grief, devotion, memory, and respect. She wanted people to pause and recognize the labor, sacrifice, and emotional strength of mothers. And in many ways, that original purpose is still available to us. Even now, Mother's Day contains two different versions of itself. One version is public and commercial, full of advertisements, sales, promotions, bouquets, gift boxes, and restaurant bookings. The other version is private and real. A phone call, a visit, a handwritten note, an old memory, a conversation, a moment of gratitude, or perhaps a quiet tribute to a mother who is no longer here. That second version is the one closest to the holiday's original heart. It is the version that asks not for money, but for sincerity. And perhaps that is why Mother's Day still matters, despite all the changes it has gone through. Because beneath the marketing, there is still something genuine. There is still the human need to say thank you. So the next time Mother's Day arrives, remember this: it was not simply invented as a modern consumer holiday. It did not begin with greeting cards and brunch menus, and it was never meant to be only a date for buying things. Its roots stretch back through ancient traditions, religious customs, women's activism, post-war healing, and one daughter's determination to honor her mother's life. Its official place in American history came in 1914. Its emotional foundation came from love and remembrance. And one of the most unforgettable facts about it is that the woman who built it later fought against the commercial version the world embraced. That tension is still with us today. Will Mother's Day be only about products, or will it still be about appreciation? Maybe the best way to honor the history of Mother's Day is not just to celebrate it, but to understand what it was meant to represent. Not perfection, not performance, not expensive gifts, but recognition. Recognition for care that is often taken for granted. Recognition for sacrifice that often goes unnoticed. Recognition for the women whose influence shapes lives in quiet, lasting ways. And perhaps that is why Mother's Day continues to endure. Because behind every bouquet, every card, every family gathering, and every annual tradition, there is a deeper truth. Someone cared for us before we could care for ourselves. Someone protected us before we understood danger. Someone gave time, effort, patience, and love in ways we often only understand later. That is what gives Mother's Day its real power. Not the flowers, not the restaurants, not the advertisements, but the chance to stop, even briefly, and acknowledge one of the most important relationships in human life. And that is the real history of Mother's Day. A story of tradition, memory, love, struggle, and meaning that has lasted far longer and reached much deeper than most people ever realize. Thank you. If you enjoy listening, like, comment, and subscribe.